Right. So I'm just going to quote Richard Feynman for no other reason, the fact that I think is interesting. And he said something that I think is perhaps pertinent to what Terry is about to talk about, which was the simple fact that he said that the ultimate test of your knowledge is your capacity to convey it to another. So, Terry, with that, you're on the block.
Yeah, it might be a short conversation.
Let's get a little into your background, mate, and what's your why? Where do you come from?
Sure. Look, the short version is I grew up in the bush on a farm. Came through a career that sort of started in the meat industry, or building industry actually, to start with, then through the meat industry. Spent a bit of time hands-on, meatworks, abattoir, so forth, and then into clerical roles after that. Made a shift early in my career into the steel industry, which sort of had me glued to it for nearly 27 years, and moving through commercial qualifications. I don't tell too many people that. I'm actually a bean counter by trade. Realized pretty early on in my career that that's not really where I wanted to end up. So I made a big backward shift into a sales role.
Okay.
Moved into
so you went from
management.
CFO to sales, or
from what? Sorry.
You went from CFO, so the accounting side, to sales.
Correct. Yep.
Wow, that is a jump.
It is.
What sparked that?
Well, it was really that I'd set a goal for myself as I moved into the steel, into the second business I was in, the steel industry. When I looked at the state manager and thought, I could do that job. So I set myself a role of being the state manager within 10 years. And to do that, I needed to move into sales and branch management experience, and which I actually achieved that goal in 8 years. So it was a tick that list. But that was what made the change, was moving from accounting into, I was the state accountant at the time. So to move back to become a junior salesperson, I used to give the sales manager a hard time about not hitting his budgets. And next thing you know, I'm working for the sales manager. So it was a very interesting time. But I learned a lot from him. 27 years all up in the steel industry, and then about 10 years ago, decided to make a leap and moved into the technology sector. We use live chat and staffing now, predominantly in the technology sector, but across a whole range of industries actually, for lead generation, customer support. In a nutshell.
That moving from steel to software, that's also a sort of jump. What in God's name sparked you to do that?
It's a funny story actually. I was at a stage in my career in the steel industry that I really wasn't enjoying the experience. I'm much more of an entrepreneurial type, and it was a large organization I was involved with at a very senior level. It was very political.
Right.
Luckily, through my career, I've been able to hold and be involved in entrepreneurial roles or action roles, running businesses from a fairly early age, pretty big businesses, and in environments where there was a lot of autonomy. Through acquisition, some of that autonomy, and purely as a climate of the organisation or a culture of the organisation, was replaced with bureaucracy, and I wasn't really enjoying that environment. So I was looking for something. My radar was up. My wife started a business when we moved to Melbourne. She needed a website. We're sitting out the front of a hairdressing salon, chatting to this guy beside me, and long story short, he did websites, and I said, maybe you should do this, and we got chatting, and then two ladies walked out of the hairdressing salon, and it turned out it was his wife and my wife, who had actually become friends that we didn't know, and we sort of forged the friendship over the 45 minutes we'd been waiting for our wives that said they'd be out in 10 minutes. So and nice. He did end up building the website for my wife, and the way it came about was that one day we realized that there was a lot more appointments coming through from my wife's business, like very quickly, and it went from sort of one appointment a week from the website to sort of getting 4 to 5 a day. And I wasn't sure what was driving it. I just assumed that it was the normal SEO and everything.
How long ago was that? Just so people understand.
So probably 2013.
Okay.
and I went on the website to have a look at what was going on and realized that there's this person on there. And back at that time, I actually thought we'd been hacked or something. You know, it's like, what are you doing on the website? And it was a live chat function that was testing out
All right.
to see if it worked. And it was staffed. So it was live chat and he actually had some people sitting in there.
Mhm.
And so this went on for a couple of months and the business was growing and the
Mhm.
leads that were coming through the website. He was a digital marketer.
Mhm.
Um, he all of a sudden the leads just dried up.
Right.
And I'm on the phone. My wife rang me and said, look, I don't know what's happening here. So I gave him a call and said, what's going on? He said, look, it's down for a couple of days. Don't worry about it. I'm just making some modifications. It'll be up again soon. I said, well, don't worry about it. The leads have stopped. This is the lead source. This is where the leads are coming from.
Mm.
And it was that moment that was sort of, had those aha moments where it's like, wow, hang on a second. He turn it on, jump straight away, turn it off, stop straight away. This is the thing that is driving the conversion rate on this website.
Mm.
And so we started over the next couple of years. We got to know each other pretty well and really to understand the business. I did some research in terms of what the potential was in the industry with a service like that.
Mhm.
And long story short, we ended up in business together. That was sort of how that. And so I decided to leave the company I was with in the industry, steel industry, and moved over to the technology sector. So it was very interesting. The Saturday morning I woke up after having left the steel industry in senior roles here in Australia, the chain of responsibility in terms of safety is the onus is on senior executives in the business.
Mm. Mm.
I woke up that Saturday morning and felt a lightness that I didn't realise there was such a heaviness that had been on me from that responsibility of making sure that people are safe through the business. If somebody doesn't restrain a load of steel properly and it falls off in a bus stop,
Mm.
it's severe circumstances. You're talking about
Yeah.
lives lost, not just a scratch or a couple of stitches. Generally, when there's a accident in the steel industry, it's a big accident.
Yeah.
And so to wake up that Saturday morning with that lightness, it was like, wow, I'm looking forward to the rest of my life now. Start in this new light mode. But
And
interesting,
that
and we
all
made a big
came from a
mistake.
quick haircut with your wife.
Yeah, that's right. And well, look, we
Absolutely
made a big
perfect.
mistake early on in that business. One of the things we talked about was making a software
Mm.
versus the service, and we sort of decided, no, look, we'll bootstrap it, get the revenues up, and then build the software. So we sort of did that
Mm.
in the wrong way around. But we're just about there now. So
Mm. I suppose that's one of the things that, from my perspective, I mean, I configure ethically the other side, which is not, chatbots, which I think are absolute crap.
yeah,
Have got nothing to do with actually getting people onto a phone or onto a conversation, which I think is where I see your model being really helpful, especially when it comes to this SaaS space, because quite frankly, that's just got a terrible reputation for like, we don't want to talk to customers, which is just crackers because it can change a business's trajectory completely. And I love the fact that what you're doing is actually saying, right, okay, if we're going to the website, it's not just a dead space, it's not just a billboard. We're actually going to then make, set up a process and get people to interact with each other that actually brings something to the customer themselves, gets their questions answered, and it's a process that that business is defined with you. If I understood that correctly.
true. It's yeah, I've got a bit of grain in my beard. I've dealt with some vendors over the years, quite a large number in the
Mm.
roles that I've had, and it strikes me as bizarre that in this business that's very reliant on technology,
Mm.
some of the worst buying experiences I've had have been through and from SaaS organizations. In fact, so bad that I've done my research, decided I wanted to buy one particular product, but
Mm.
their inbound process was so bad. I ended up offended and thought, I don't want to deal with this organization anymore.
I'm just
The
going
level
through
of
that at the moment. It's taken 3 days to pay them.
it's crazy. It's crazy. But, look, I, I've it doesn't help that I've got this philosophy of keep things simple. And
Mm.
so when I see levels and with the roles, with the luxury of having the roles that I've had and being able to have a bird's eye view across organizations and all the different functions within an organization, I understand what's happening as I'm going through each of those steps and where the complexity is being built into that business. And when you build complexity into a business, you build cost into a business. And whether that's direct cost from financial outflows or cost through lack of revenues because of a bad experience on the inflows, complexity builds cost into a business. So it's I'm very attuned to it, and I'm very sensitive to it. And don't put me through it because I won't be there for too much longer.
I think that is a typical human thing that people, especially if they're smart, they want to make things more complex to justify the fact they've got a job. Whereas I always look at it, and people call me crazy and have done for the last 20 years, is I was always trying to put myself out of a job. And oddly enough, dash and bother, I've still got one.
You know, that's I think the reality of any true leader of a business really should be focusing on building the capability of a team in that organization, that they do make themselves redundant, that the team don't need them, that they can run autonomously. I think that's one of the goals and ambitions that any leader should have. But just quickly back, I think on that Saturday morning when I woke up and felt that lightness, the other thought that came to mind was that, you know, I've shifted now from shipping packs of steel around to, you know, shipping packets of data through the internet. So it was a big change. But I think the final stages in the steel industry were very, very interesting, and I was blessed to have that experience because I was able to manage a couple of large merger and acquisitions, the integrations of those into the business, both from an operational perspective and a technology perspective. And so I think it was being involved in that technology side of things so heavily in the last 2 years in my career there that gave me the confidence then to take that step into the career that I've got now, completely away from it.
So it did prepare you. That's at least something.
Somewhat.
Yeah. So I'm just going to pause you there and just everybody, sorry, just some mechanics. If you're watching this and do want to comment, or you don't want to do this online, I know it's being recorded, it's live, and it's going to be on LinkedIn forever. So if you don't, get hold of Terry. How should they actually get hold of you to have a chat if they want to ask a question? Just so we know this up front.
Look, LinkedIn, you connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me through the Chat Metrics business, or Terry Wilson -TJ, I think it is the actual handle on LinkedIn. Is probably the easiest way to do it. We also have the my email address, terry@chatmetrics. We like to keep things simple. So if there's any direct questions or anything after this, you'd like to connect, feel free to jump and connect with me on LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah, because people are lurkers, unfortunately. It is just the way it is. Everybody else, just so you know, there is a lag between me and Terry talking and yourselves of about 20 seconds to about 2 minutes. So if you do put something in the chat, please don't be offended if we keep talking for 2 or 3 minutes before you get a response. And we will take those questions at the end. And with that, I'm just going to mention the sponsor now, who is sponsors the actual lives, which Ask a Leader, and that is speculoconsulting.com. They are a group of people that have been around since 2017. That is led by Ben Fisher, who is their director, and they do fractional resources in PMO, the IT transformation space, and also in the PMO as well. And that as a consultancy, as a done-for-you service, and also in resource augmentation. So that is speculoconsulting.com. And just to say what it makes them special, and I've met and worked for them before, is because they have some very, very smart people with a lot of experience that are basically paid by the hour, so that you don't need to actually have a bucket load of cash. You can keep your costs nice and tight, so that you get them when you need them, and they're done, and they hand it back to you as a package, and you're not left there stood like most companies are, where you're saying, what did that person do? That's not them. Right, and with that, that's that done. Sponsor out the way. And sorry, I suppose the best thing to do is ask you, although you've sort of slightly mentioned it, who you serve and what's your why. I suppose we've sort of got the why sort of sorted out, but who do you actually serve?
Well, I think there's the two parts to that question. Myself, on a daily basis, I serve our team. I serve our employees.
Mhm,
I think without the employees and without the people in the business, there is no business. There's no service. And I don't think it really matters a difference whether it's a full SaaS, product-led growth SaaS organization. There's still people required to make any business tick.
mhm,
Or whether it's, you're making 1,000 widgets and having to ship them all around the world. I think the people side of things. So my role as far as that is concerned is making sure that people can be the best that they can be, take obstacles and obstructions away, make sure they've got the skills and tools and knowledge to do their job,
mhm,
and try not to put too many obstacles in their way in terms of policies and procedures and so forth. As far as our business is concerned, we serve our ambition, and I say our because my business partner and I are we're virtually joined at the hip in
mhm,
terms of our values and goals and why we do things.
mhm,
And from a business perspective, Chatmetrics' goal really is to remove the waste that happens in businesses through
mhm,
advertising and marketing investment,
mhm,
by helping them make sure that they convert every potential revenue opportunity from their website.
mhm,
And so that's the broad, from a business perspective, who we serve.
mhm,
We started off, as most small businesses do, trying to be all things to everybody, and very quickly realized through my experiences with vendors that technology had a huge, the tech sector had a huge gap.
mhm.
Um, we actually did some research a little while ago and went through 5,006 websites, actually, 5,006 exactly,
Wow.
and identified who had live chat, what was the live chat experience, who did, who didn't. And there was a breakdown between e-commerce and B2B.
Yeah.
E-commerce are light years ahead of B2B when it comes to that customer experience. I think the difference, and the main difference, is that e-commerce recognize that for them to get an outcome, they need to present the user experience right now. There's going to be a basket checkout now. Someone's going to get their credit card out and pay now. So I need to
Mhm.
make sure that their experience is spot on all the way through.
Yeah.
Whereas B2B is generally booking meetings or getting people to sign up for a free trial. It's off in the future. It's a future revenue. It's not an immediate revenue. And I think when there's a
Mm,
future revenue, it drives a different set of consequences and behaviors, as
mm,
opposed to a potential immediate revenue.
mm,
And obviously then, the fact that with limited resources, they don't want to talk to every single tire kicker that comes onto their website that might come through. This whole idea of how do we manage a live chat service? Oh, let's have a chatbot. So again, e-commerce, we found there are chatbots all through e-commerce, but
mm,
they are very good. The experience is generally very good. The
mhm.
experience with B2B chatbots is predominantly very, very bad. And I
Useless.
mean very, very bad compared to the
Oh yeah,
e-commerce.
I know.
Uh,
I fixed those
and
things. So yes.
and again, I think it comes to the challenge of being able to staff it. So, that's
Mm,
that's that's who we serve. And the
mm,
big why for us, my business partner and I, are pretty simple. It's all about the people. We want to make sure that people are financially secure and have the ability to look after their families and feel successful and that they're contributing. So, one of the things we do is we've got we'll call it the Chatmetrics University, but it's a small group of people that
mm,
didn't have an opportunity to get an education and weren't able to earn an income. So we pay them and we teach them. We teach them skills.
mhm,
From everything from website building and design, graphic artistry.
mhm,
We've got one guy now that's doing full blown animations. So we haven't had anybody leave that's come through that. They've stayed with us as employees, which has been fantastic. But we also teach them how to find a job if they want,
mm,
and go from there. But that's sort of the three whys for us: people internally in the business, anyone really that's wasting that has their money wasted in
mm,
generating leads and conversions through a website, But the bigger why is really taking a percentage of what we do and putting it back into the community.
Right. That's a very abnormal goal. I know that the first team that I had ever had, I couldn't give them any money apart from my own, which I gave them my own bonus, by the way. But the only thing I could do was give them training. And when I went back 10 years later, of the 8 core team, there was 6 still there. So it's an amazing how much that makes a difference for people.
It
So
does. Absolutely.
totally
does.
agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Right. So I suppose that's a nice segue into you've sort of answered the next question, but so I'm not going to push on it. It says, how do you see leadership? So be specific about it.
Look, I think I've given that summary in terms of what it is. I think leadership is really making sure that people. There's this vague boundary that people talk about leadership, talk about management. I mean, management of a business has different components. And a big chunk of managing a business, sure, you've got your financials and you need to make decisions around all of that. But all of that is through people. And in my mind, the definition of management is getting things done through others. Well, where does leadership different to that in terms of what it is that you're doing? You're trying to get people to follow you down a path to deliver particular outcomes. I think leadership is somewhat the other way around, in that it's not getting people to follow you, it's having people want to follow you.
Yeah.
And leadership often comes, or the expectation of leadership comes from roles and titles and certain authority that's applied to those titles and the position that you're in. But when it's all said and done, I've seen roles that and senior managers that nobody would follow. Nobody really does follow. They sit there and do the old nod, yes, 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 and then go away and do their own thing. There's some people that will do that regardless of who the leader might be in an organization. But I've seen it also where almost their entire organization does, operates in that type of environment because of and predominantly because of the leadership, either the leadership style of the individual that's in there, or the fact that person has, bumped their head up against the Peter Principle, where they've actually been promoted to a role that's beyond their level of competency. And that happens to most of us at some point in time. When are you ever ready for the next job, for the next step in your career? So I think there's probably a little bit of incompetency with everybody when they start a new job. But if you're capable and you're ready for it, then you'll learn into that. But I think some people are promoted into roles that they just should never be in, whether their desire or ego, ambition is sort of overriding the checks that they can actually cash. I think is probably the biggest issue with that. And conversely, often I've seen in junior leaders then step up into roles where underneath in that environment, people want to do something. They want to do the right thing. Generally, I believe people want to do the right thing. They want to be productive and be successful. And so there'll be someone underneath them that will be the true leader in an organization, even though it's not by title. So that's one of the
I suppose that's the difference between what I call in authority or an authority. But I think I don't know, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is the one thing that organizations, I think even to this day, are still very bad at, is preparing somebody to be a leader is not a job title. It's something totally different. It is a totally different position. Where you said, for example, at the beginning of the call, is that you're there to serve. And you got that Peter Principle by being good at your job, which is something totally different than what you're about to step into. I'd just be curious if you'd seen, any organisations or your experience on that do that well, that do what you're doing, which is basically getting people skills and then upskilling them. But as far as leadership's concerned, is that something you think is sort of they're born to, or is it something they can learn?
Look, that's a great question, and as we've you know, obviously this conversation this morning has been in my mind over the last week or so, and that's a question I've been asking myself, and I think there. I think it is an internal. I think it is internal. I think it can be influenced by external factors. So I think, you know, there'll be certain life events that will happen, but I think there's some underlying traits that you must have built into you that will determine how successful you'll be as a leader, regardless of what those life events might be. So, for instance, I think a couple of the traits are integrity. You know, you have to have an undying commitment to do what you say you're going to do, to be honest with your people. I think a propensity for transparency, for sharing, you know, the good news and the bad. And I think probably the as important and probably one of the critical in terms of, if you don't have this, then I think it's probably one of the biggest contributing factors, and that's a tenacity. The ability to keep moving on regardless of the, you know, there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, there'll be good times again. Recently, I can't remember who said it, but recently I heard somebody say, "This too shall pass." And it really resonated with me. This too shall pass. It's whether you're riding a wave of success, you can guarantee something at some point in time will happen where that wave doesn't look the same as it does when you started. Conversely, if you're going through a very difficult time, generally it won't last. There'll be external factors that and factors you can take yourself, steps you can take yourself to move that. So I think the tenacity to keep moving forward and not give up was really interesting. You know, leadership happens in so many different areas. Well, I know we're talking specifically about business, but I recently saw a video where a homeless person was being interviewed, and it was very short, and they asked virtually two questions. You know, have you? He asked one question. He said, "Have you given up?" And this person looked forlorn. They were disheveled. They obviously homeless. Their belongings in a plastic bag beside them. Their clothes, they were dirty and unshaven. And the question was, "Have you given up?" And the answer was, "Hell no." You know, and it shocked me. It was such a juxtaposition from looking at that person and seeing their appearance. You know, and they looked downtrodden. The shoulders were slumped, the chin was down, all of the hallmarks of, and I think that's why the person that was asking the question asked, "Have you given up?" And then to see the fire in his eyes when he looked up and said, "Hell no." Then he came back and said, you know, "Am I happy with my life right now? But it ain't always going to be like this," you know. So it was like, man, that guy, you know, he's someone that you would, you know, I would have a very high interest in having a conversation with him. Conversely, early in my steel career, we were recruiting for forklift drivers in one of the branches in the business, one of the regional branches. One of the applicants was outstanding on paper, in fact, overqualified. But we always had the focus on employing people that are better than you, or employing people that always have the potential to move one or two roles ahead of the one that they're applying for. And this guy certainly had that. So he's applied as a forklift operator. We conducted about 6 interviews on that day. He was the last interview. He and his wife are sitting in the waiting room. So they come in for the interview. His wife comes in for the interview with him. And this guy, when we're asking the questions, we could see he was very shy and he had difficulty in answering the questions. And his wife answered all of the questions for him. She was outstanding. She went through, she answered the questions for him. She prompted him where he should respond. And after that interview, Murray and I looked at each other and thought, and we said, you know what? If this guy's got such a strong woman behind him, he'll be able to do anything. And she was the leader. She was the leader. She was the one that had the leadership quality. And it came from such a point of, you know, genuine love and respect for each other. We could see that in the relationship. It wasn't dominating or domineering or forceful in any way, shape or form. It was a true care. The guy wanted to have a career shift from running a horse stud and moving into a corporate organization, which we were, and, you know, with potential career opportunities. But he felt so far out of his comfort zone that he just really struggled in the conversation. So we gave him the job.
Right.
And guess what? He ended up being promoted into a sales role, and he got promoted into a supervisor's role, and then got promoted into a branch manager's role. So, you know, unfortunately, and I think to really press home, I think how important you know, a leader in your life is. And they became friends of mine. Unfortunately, she contracted cancer of the liver and passed away. And there was such an impact on him that it was not long, a couple of years after that, and he took his own life. So I think you know, you talk about impact of leadership and support, and yes, there's so much more in a relationship like that. I understand love and so forth, love and support. But you know, that level, you talk about leadership. That woman had leadership, you know, oozing out of her, and she hadn't been through any training regime. She hadn't had any. She had the example of a good father. That's what she had. That's where she got her leadership capabilities and you know, the desire for a husband to be successful. So
that's
she was an
really
absolute
what Tom
queen,
is all
absolute
about.
queen. But look, I think
they'll stand when you can't.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Yeah.
I think there's different places that leadership pops its head up, and you know, I'm pretty attuned to that. We've got some good potential leaders in our business. I haven't had those conversations with them yet, but I see the sparks of some, you know, there's some junior leaders in our business that are really showing you know, the potential. So I mean, I know we'll get onto that question shortly, but yeah.
So, folks, if you're looking for a promotion, Terry's thinking about it already.
Isn't that our role? Isn't that our role?
Don't tell them that I've not told you this. I said, you do realize this is streamed on the internet.
Look, it's the how do you recognize, you know, how do I recognize? Well, I look at those people that are stepping up. They're helping others. They're you know, putting in discretionary effort. They're interested in things beyond their own role. You know, that's sort of the initial sparks that I can see. And there's others that are, you know, just simply doing much more than's expected of them, and in other areas than they would normally be focused on. So it's very pleasing to see. It means our recruitment process is working well. So
well, I presume you put the process in, so with your partner. So I suppose that's a nice segue into just to sort of keep on the track, is what you see as the upsides of being a leader. And I think I've got an idea after hearing what you said, but let's hear the specifics in your own words.
Look, I think that when you say upsides, do you mean for the
so when I look at it, so for example, I'll just give you a quick example. It's a quick story. I got given a team that was absolutely downtrodden, and I got beaten up for 6 months by the business because I basically told everybody to go take a hike because they were so down they couldn't stand up for themselves, and nobody had. So for about 6 months, I took an absolute beating. You know, I was basically put on performance review and all the rest of the stuff. I'd just been promoted, by the way, and I didn't tell them anything about that. Nothing, nada, because the way I saw it is I saw some really good people that had somebody that was not a bad person. He just wasn't a leader, and he was very introverted and didn't express himself very well. Fantastic bloke, really nice, was also a friend, but he couldn't see that the people were hurting, and he didn't see that they were stuck and they were feeling helpless. So that was if I had a downside, is that sometimes you're going to have to do something where somebody is threatening to kick you out.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And you cannot tell anybody apart from somebody at the same level, and they often don't want to hear it because
You,
that's why you got hired.
you're so true. You're so true. Look, I think a couple of the upsides for me, really, the single biggest one is being able to pass on the accolades of success and seeing individuals rise through an organization. I mean, for me, that's enormously self-satisfying. They have this built-in desire to help others. Much to the angst of my wife. Sometimes she thinks I spend too much time doing that rather than focusing on what I should be focusing on. So, but that's just who I am, and that's what helps, get me out of bed every day. One of the many things that helps me get out of bed every day. So I think that's part of the one of the good things of leadership. Being, for me personally, one of the greatest things I think in being leadership or in a management role is being able to have an influence, make a mark on the world, a positive mark on the world, and a positive mark on individuals. I've been through some roles where I was traditionally the youngest person promoted into the size role that I was throughout most of my career. And so often you'd have people, of much more mature years working for you that were much more experienced. At one point, I moved from a business that was predominantly a business to customer B2C business into a B2B business. And I looked at what was going on. The business was losing $130,000 a year. And in that was being driven by one customer that had been there for 20 years, that accounted for nearly 30% of the revenues in that business.
Ouch.
And so, I made the decision to go and tell that customer that they were going to get a big price rise, which they didn't like. And they told us to go and jump. And everyone in that business was, when we lost that volume, everyone was worried about their jobs. I said, don't worry about your jobs. We'll manage it in such a way that, the profitability will improve. We'll keep everybody's jobs on the way through, which we did. Long story short, 6 months later, that customer finally came back, not through me. They hated me, so they wouldn't deal with me. But that customer did come back into the business via some of the sales staff.
Yeah.
And, we turned that business around from losing, I think it was about $130,000 a year to making, $500,000 a year. So it was one of those things that there was a level of commitment and tenacity required to stand your ground, because they did on several occasions come back at me through that time and said, drop your prices, we'll come back, drop your prices, we'll come back. And senior management asking me, because in the steel industry, it's all about volume, particularly when you're vertically integrated to a steel maker. They're making the steel, they want it out into the market. So where you have a blip where your volume decreases, that's a major issue. So, I was sort of copying it from all angles on that particular one. But
the margins are a lot smaller in the steel industry.
They are. But in the end, it worked out. So I think, look, the good things are being able to show and demonstrate that you'll take, I actually take pride in the fact that in one of the roles I was in, they went through and assessed our potential for executive level roles, and through that process, and I've been blessed in my career, the training, the assessments that I've been through, that's given me a level of self-awareness that is probably beyond most, but also that I know that I've got some terrible failings I try and deal with it on a daily basis as well.
You can tell me about those later, mate.
Well, the biggest failing is that I tend to be pretty straight shooter, and so as from it also turns out to be one of your greatest strengths. The thing that people hate hearing the most is that they're not doing a good job.
Yeah.
And that openness and transparency that I have in terms of sharing that information, I don't do it in a brutal way, but I don't sugarcoat it either. I'm very honest with the behavior that's not right, the outcomes that aren't being achieved.
Yeah.
But I follow it up and make sure there's an action plan in place and the next steps to take, et cetera, et cetera. But I have a propensity to do that sooner rather than later, because I like to give people enough rope to start choking, but not to hang themselves. I'd rather see them be successful then leave the business. You know, there's,
I'm just imagining the hangman's noose here, like somebody just on the toe tips.
Look, one of the best
You've got
environments.
the opportunity to save your neck.
Look, one of the best environments ever operated in was one that had they set external parameters, and they had what they called a tight, loose management environmental culture, where here you can't go outside this, can't go outside this one, can't go outside here. As long as you do whatever you want within there, aim towards delivering this result. It was an incredible culture and environment to operate in. It allowed you to be as entrepreneurial, as innovative as you wanted to be.
Within these boundaries.
Within the boundaries. And the boundaries were very, very reasonable, very broad. The boundaries were very broad. And, the boundaries were like, don't break the law, don't break these policies. Other than that, do what you see fit. And, it bred an environment of innovation. And I think one of the things of being a leader is watching people come up with amazing ideas. And I've sat in rooms where we've been brainstorming on particular problems that we've had. And I think if you don't create a culture where it's safe for people to fail, if you don't create a culture or an environment where it's okay for people to make mistakes, and that for me, that's the choking rather than hanging, coughing rather than choking. It's got to be safe, and they also need to know you've got their back. Yeah. So, for instance, if it turns out that the results that you all agreed to and move forward on aren't delivered as expected, then for me, you're the one that takes the bullets. Yeah. You protect the team. That was my decision. I made that mistake. I'll wear that. But I think where there's good results, and they know that if they come up with a good idea, then they're the ones that get the accolades for that good idea. Creates an environment of innovation, because people will think, they'll put their ideas forward. They know that they're protected. They're not going to lose their jobs if the idea that everyone agrees to, doesn't fail. They're not going to get pinned for that. So, I think that's pretty, a very important aspect of leadership as well.
I think the only thing that I was always very strong on is, if we decided as a team that was what we were going to do.
Absolutely.
And when people started moaning afterwards, I'd just raise an eyebrow and look at them.
Absolutely.
And that was usually enough.
Gav, 100% alignment. You can argue, buck, fight, kick and scream as much as you want in the room while we're making the decision.
Yep.
Be as vocal as you need to be if you need to get your point across and you feel it's not being made. However, once we make that decision, then that decision is made. And outside of this room, everyone will see that we are 100% aligned, and we will execute it until we decide that there's going to be a change. So, 100%. Yeah. And look, and you need to do that, particularly as a leadership team. When you're managing managers, if you have people that aren't aligned, then all of a sudden the business starts to do different things in different departments, and you find that the decision you made, the strategy you set, you never really see the true results of that, because other people are doing different things in the business. That's why, there's got to be you call it, it's a, rule with an iron fist. Well, I think it's not necessarily ruling with an iron fist, but it's setting expectations and rules that, if you don't want to play like this, we'll get out of the playground. Simple as that.
I remember a conversation I had where everybody was assuming that things the way they were, because my past life, I got given a lot of platinum customers, which were basically the top tier of a particular organization. And everybody said, it's like this, 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 and this. And I said, that's fantastic. Can I just go in and actually talk to the people and see what they say about us? And I sort of walked in, did what I'm sure you've heard of the guy, Chris Fossey, does accusations audit. I learned it from a guy called Stuart Diamond, similar type of thing, where he basically just said, we've done this wrong, we've done this wrong, it looks like we've done that wrong, it looks like this is the way you feel about us, and it looks as though you want to leave. And you could have heard a pin drop in the room. And then the CTO said, oh, no, actually, no, it's not that bad. It's just this and this and this and this and this and this. And I was sort of literally writing like flipping crazy. And we got out of the meeting and I said, is that anything that we just missed? And because I'm only one person, I can only write so fast. Is there anything else? And everybody said, no, there isn't. I said, okay. I said, how much of that was what you assumed? I think we got to about 10%.
Mm, mm, mm.
because contractually we're fulfilling the contract. All good there. You know, we're full. We had terrible amounts of tickets, all that bad stuff, but it was within the sort of scope of the contract. So practically, we were delivering.
Yep.
As far as they were concerned, they were saying, "Look, literally, they wouldn't even let the sales team or the CEO of our company through the door."
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
couldn't agree more with you. Right,
Yep.
and with that, downsides, sir. What are the downsides of leadership? Because this is the one nobody really mentions. So I always put it out there. Is that right? This is how I made a mess.
Okay. So look, I think the single biggest downside of leadership I experienced when I was 19 years old.
Mm,
I'd just shifted from the meat industry into the steel industry, but I was working for a fabrication ship repair business and an industrial maintenance company in Newcastle here in
mm,
Australia,
yeah,
central New South Wales coast.
yeah,
Um, I was working in an accounting role at the time. The financial controller, the group accountant actually, that I was reporting to, who reported to the finance director, resigned.
mhm,
And I was reporting to that finance director for a period of about 6 months.
right,
3 months in to that tenure, the finance director called me in and said that you need to fire 2 of the staff. And I'm like, well,
okay,
hang on, mate, I'm part of the team. I'm not. And he said, no. Well, I'm not going to do it. You're going to have to do it. And so, it was me. The team at that point in time was me as a costing clerk, and 6 ladies that ran payroll, um, accounts payable, accounts receivable,
yeah,
and it was 2 of the accounts payable ladies that had to go.
yeah,
Long story short, for me, at 19 years old, with no guidance, no experience, having done anything like this before, it was a case of, we sat down. So, firstly, how do you justify doing something like that at that age? And so, I had a conversation with my father. My father's always been someone that, I've aspired to and looked up to, and I learned a lot. He made me who I am today.
yeah,
So
yeah,
a big chunk of it anyway. And I had a conversation with him, and I'll never forget. He said to me, "You know what? When it comes to times like this, it's a very
mm,
difficult decision,
mm,
but you need to think of a couple of things. One, it was business performance related, but also personal performance related. Those couple of individuals were low performers in the team, and
mm,
and Dad said to me, you have to look at it in 2 ways. One,
mm,
if they're not performing, there's probably a whole host of reasons for that. And
mm,
normally you would go through, have a conversation with them, find out why, try and get them to perform. But you've got business performance issues as well, and so the decision has to be made. So the other way of looking at it is that if you've got to downsize, what you're doing is protecting everybody else. Because if you
yeah,
don't downsize now, then you're going to have a much bigger downsize somewhere else in the future. And so that sort of, I can't, it didn't give me confidence. It didn't give me any solace. It was still, I'm nervous as hell. So long story short, sat down and explained the situation as empathetically and as compassionately as I could.
mm,
Um, she cried, I cried, and that was sort of my first experience in a termination. I think, you talk about the downside of leadership is that you do need to make those hard decisions. And,
mm,
you know, unfortunately in my career, I've done that hundreds of times, and it's the worst thing. It leaves the worst taste in my mouth.
yeah,
Having said that, on one occasion that I recall, it was a terrible performance management history. 3 written warnings, several chances, started formal process, 3 written warnings. The
mm,
guy sat in front of me. I said, "You're doing this again, etc., etc. We're going to have to terminate you. Unfortunately, you're going to have to find another job." And this guy was a forklift operator, 6'4", 3 foot across the shoulders, weighed 4 times as much as what I did. He could go and pick packs of steel by himself. He didn't need the forklift. And he burst into tears in front of me and said, "Thank you, thank you. Now I can go and do what I really want to do and be a chef." And I'm like, my God, man, you're operating a forklift in the steel industry. He said I couldn't do it because I couldn't let my family down. They thought that this is the right job for me, but I can go
Right.
and do it. I bumped into that guy about 18 months later, believe it or not, at a local restaurant in town. And it was like, I said, man, how you going? He goes, yeah, I'm loving it. He's an apprentice chef. So that was, a good outcome from one of the downsides. But I think, for me, downsizing, letting people go, terminating, that's probably the worst part of it.
Mm,
The other difficulty is that you need to be an umbrella. You need to be a filter. So there
mm,
will be things that happen at your level and above in an organization. For instance, I worked for a manager in a very difficult time economically here in
mm,
Australia. The business was struggling. We were doing all of the right things. It was
mm,
performing the best it possibly could.
mm.
But his management style was to give it to me in the neck
Yeah.
and relentlessly, if
Yeah.
not once a day, twice a day. That was his style.
Yeah.
Screaming, yelling over the phone, being abusive,
Mm.
telling me how useless I was. If I didn't do
Oh,
this, I was
been
going to
there.
lose my job.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. We had a
Mm,
very hugely bad impact on me.
mm.
However, my team never knew that. My team never
Yeah.
felt that. As far as they were concerned, we were doing everything we could. We were moving in the right direction. They got nothing but positive reinforcement because they were
Mm,
doing the things that we needed to do to make sure that we got the best outcomes that we could. So I
mhm.
think that, the downside, one of the negatives is that you've got you can potentially have a very negative environment that you're operating in yourself, but you still have to portray a very positive, supportive environment for the team around you. So I think that's probably I think the worst.
I think I've got a question to that. So when you say having you're an umbrella, you're a filter. Um, do you think that because if you are being that filter, you've somehow got to get through that? How did you learn to cope with that? What made you get through that?
Oh, look, that's a very deep question. I think the reality is that I would never ever impose what I was going through on anyone else. I would
Yeah.
never do that. And
Yeah.
so there were times where I had to stop and make a decision. Am I going to stay here? Or am I going to leave?
Hmm.
Um, the reality of what happened was that there was a likelihood that the manager above me was going to be moving into a different part of the organization. So
Yeah.
I think being a realistic optimist, call that a pessimist if you like, but I think I'm certainly on the optimistic side of the
Practical
scale.
optimist.
um, uh, I think for me it was back then. Perhaps it was the phrase that resonated with me now. This too shall pass. I knew it wouldn't be like this forever. The economic conditions would change. The
Mm,
environmental conditions would change. One of the things that was driving the economic conditions was a drought. Droughts break. Rain does come, and so
mm,
I knew that there would be that there would be light at the end of the tunnel.
mm,
The toll on me personally was enormous, and it was a very difficult time in my life.
mm,
Um, so it's interesting. I think that the fact that I knew that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, one way or the other. Um, I the other thing that kept me there is that if I left, he wouldn't replace me at that point in time, and so that means that what he was doing to me was going to fall down through to my team,
mm,
and I didn't want that to happen either. So it was almost tenacity, I think, and probably a bit of protectionism, and coupled with the optimism of knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you just got to push through it. So
mhm,
I think that's the big thing. And look, luckily enough, in an organisation where I had a health and safety guy working for me, who recognised that I was going through a stressful time, and said, I think you need to use the employee assistance program and get some help. Well, I did usual bloke thing, and no thanks, I'm fine. But he recognised something was going on, and that was enough for me to say, oh, well, somebody's noticed. I need to make sure I've got this filtered. So
okay. Um, yeah, I mean, do you think that's maybe a generational thing that isn't taken into account? Because how long did that go on for?
probably 15, 16 months.
bloody hell. I won't swear on a live stream, but that's a long time. Okay. I suppose then now we've got to the bottom of that. Is how would you say somebody becomes a leader if they want to be, and how would they go about that? What's the best way of going about that? I think you mentioned it at the beginning of the call, but maybe it's just one of the questions at the moment.
So look, it's almost the first thing I would ask is why. Why do you want to be a leader? Because I think unless there's an other-centered, if there's not an other-centered answer to that question, as opposed to a self-centered answer to that question, then don't do it, because you won't be successful. It'll be hard work, and you'll end up with, every day doing something that you don't enjoy, quite frankly. That's my starting point. If I think back to my own experiences, there's some pretty big life events that changed my philosophy on life and changed the way I acted. When I was 10 years old, mum and dad split up for a year. I virtually took over like what I felt was a responsibility as the elder of 3 kids to look after my brother and sister in a much more fatherly type way than I had before. We lived on a farm. Dad went away when I was 12 for work for a year, and we used to kill a lamb once a month. That was the way. Well, at 12 years old, he taught me how to do that, and that was my job then for a year to do that, kill a lamb so that we'd eat for the month, for the year while he was away. I think there's life's experiences. But the experience when I was 19 years old having to terminate somebody, it sort of gives you this perspective and understanding of what might be involved. I'd never thought about it as leadership. In fact, it wasn't probably till my early 30s, after I'd achieved my state manager's goal, the first one, that I'd read a book that sort of brought everything together. So I think, how would you...
what was the book?
Wanted to be...
What was the book?
It was actually The 1 Minute Manager.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Believe it or not, such a simple little read,
it
all
is.
of the things that encompass good management, good leadership, are actually in that little book that takes you about an hour to read. It's like, wow! I think reading it after you'd experienced everything was the light bulb moment. If you read it before you've done all that and you look, okay, this is how I'm going to go and do things, then you won't have the same level of resonance. But look, I mean, that's a book I'd recommend. Another Lightshed book for me was Getting the Best Out of People by Aubrey Daniels. We went through that book as I was going through some safety training in the steel industry. So I think, how do you become a leader? One, you need to...
So it's a choice. That's the first thing.
It's a choice. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you need to know why.
Your choice.
Yeah, your choice. And you need to know why, what's motivating you to do that. I think that start testing yourself. To become a leader, you need to become a leader. And so when you're moving, if you want to become a leader, then start showing the leadership qualities. Have integrity, help others, see yourself as someone that's actually removing obstacles from others. You can use the old phrase of lead by example. Well, the standard that you walk past is the standard you set. So if you're not in a leadership role yet and you see something that's not right in the business or someone not doing something, then action. Say something about it, do something about it, with the individual to actually help them and change their behavior to move on. So I think, you can become a leader. You can become a leader in any role. And if you are, I can guarantee you that you'll be seen and you'll be spotted, because my experience is that there's true leaders are few and far between. People get promoted to new roles and they learn things, but I think natural born leadership and that innate ability to be able to inspire and motivate others to be the best that they can be. I think that comes from within. And look, you don't need to be extrovert. My natural tendency is introvert, but I'd chosen the accounting field to start with, for goodness sake.
Proof.
But I realized pretty early on that to be successful in my career and in the roles that I wanted to, I needed to act as extrovert. And so that I changed everything in the way I did everything. It still doesn't mean that, when I get home and my day's finished, how I get energy is by myself in the corner reading a book or curled up in the fetal position. It's not out interacting with other people. I'm an introvert. I don't really like other people. I'm happy to sit by myself in a room all day.
I'm happy alone. Leave me.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't be like that if you want to be successful in a management or leadership role. There's another couple of books. Good to Great is a classic book. It's about management, but it's also about making those decisions in management. The E-Myth by Gerber will give you an understanding of systems and processes in a business. And I think the other one,
for techies, that's brilliant. By the way, if you're technical, want to become a leader, read that man's book. I know it's an old fogies one, but frankly, that's probably where you are if you haven't started down the road.
Absolutely. And the other one that I found fascinating, particularly from the steel industry, but it is applicable much more than you would think in the technology industry, is a book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. It's a book about production. The story is about a production facility, but the reality is it's about finding bottlenecks in your organization. And bottlenecks can be anywhere in any process, whether you're making something, even a software, or whether you're making an output like customer service. There will be bottlenecks that you can find everywhere to improve the efficiencies in your business. So, I think great leaders, I think, aren't made. I think it's and they're not born either necessarily. I think it's a combination of both. There'll be some natural intrinsic traits, but I think there's also probably some life events that have to kick that into gear for some people, maybe not for everybody. But yeah, I think my one piece of advice in closing, if you want to be a leader, be a leader. Start stepping up.
That's fair enough.
And experience it and learn from the mistakes you make.
Cool. And I suppose here you're going to have to sprinkle some fairy dust on this one. So how do you create leaders? If you're saying they're not necessarily they haven't made the choice, and you say you notice them, it's because they're stepping up and taking that responsibility on. So they've got the makings of it. But is there something like a system that you use, or do you have that laid out within your organization, or is it something that you're just basing off your experiences with you and your co-founder?
Yeah. So I think we don't personally in our business, we don't have anything formally. I've been through, again, I've been blessed in my career in working in the size organizations that I have, 17,000 employee corporations. There's a lot of resources and, leadership programs up the wazoo, so to speak.
Any good?
I think there's not too bad. I think it's one of those things where, what do I do now? So from those businesses' perspective, what they do, they'll find aspiring leaders in two ways. The ones that put their hand up and show interest in stepping up into higher level roles and that apply for higher level roles in the organization, obviously. And the other is that as managers and leaders in the business, that we recognize those that are stepping up and that are showing potential for leadership roles. There's a track then that you'd go through. The first thing you need to do is understand about how to manage and influence people. So there's this whole, training, management, call it managing people type training, behavioral training. Then there's a whole strategic component to it. If you make a decision, how long do you need to stick with that decision before you see the outcomes? I think, there's a whole process of training leaders and giving leaders the experience, putting them on projects, cross-divisional projects or cross-department projects, take someone from sales and put them in operations and put them with HR and then give them a solution that a problem that the business is trying to solve at an executive level, and put these junior leaders or junior potential leaders on that and get them to work together and work across through different parts of the business. I think that I find that was a very successful program, an enjoyable program that I was on. In our business, we don't have anything so formal, but what I tend to do is for those people that are showing some potential is just to start to stretch them a little bit, give them other tasks to do, take them out of the roles or add additional tasks to the roles that they're doing, or give them a task in a different functional area. give them some responsibility in terms of changing some behavior or asking people to do something or getting something done that they've got to do through other people as opposed to just themselves. And, again, for me, it's like giving them every opportunity to step up and start to do. And as I said, they'll be very close to them and mentor and guide them. I won't tell them what to do every step of the way. And, there's different levels of development and different leadership styles you should apply to that. But when I'm giving someone the opportunity to stretch, I like to give them enough rope to start choking, but not hang themselves. So, because I think that's the greatest motivator.
I'm going to call you the hangman from now on.
I think it's the greatest motivator. When somebody is starting to go, when they realize that they're out of their depth, and when they start to realize that, oh, hang on, I don't know what I'm doing so much, they're much more open and receptive to input, feedback, and guidance and support. Whereas when somebody's first stepping into doing something new, generally they'll leap in where angels fear to tread. They think they know everything, and yep, I've got this covered, and they're not going to listen to you, whatever you say. So you're better off just letting them go that little bit further, and then get to the point where
first in the mud.
You don't want them to necessarily come to you crying, but in your touch-ups and touch bases and check-ins, you can see that they're starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. That's a good sign. I like that.
So I know we're overrunning by about 6 minutes. Have you got time for one last question?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a cracker. So I learned this from a friend of mine. It said, are there any questions that I've not asked you, Terry, that I should be asking? Pick one or more. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, look, I think, with the conversation that we've had, I think it's been pretty good as far as it's covering the topic is concerned. That's for sure. I think I think the question is, what's the one most important thing, in management? If there's one single thing, in leadership, I think it's being other-centered. I think it's being caring more for others than you care for yourself. I think I think that's probably. How do you demonstrate that? I think that's probably a good question. Is how do you actually demonstrate that? I mentioned before that you take the bullets to the chest and passed on the accolades, but I think there's the other ways to do that as well. For instance, I go and visit one of our regional businesses, 30 odd employees, normal management that experienced in the past is the old, pigeon style where they fly in, drop some shit around and then fly back out again. Well, I didn't operate like that.
That is so good to stick in my head.
I didn't operate like that.
Pigeon shit.
So look, I do the old classic, walk the floor. So I'd like to make sure that you go through and see all the staff every time we go there, whether it's the manager through to the forklift driver and cleaners, everybody in the business as a starting point. Generally where I stayed, there'd be 1 or 2 nights stay, whether it's in meeting with customers, but I'd always make sure that at the place I stayed at, the motel, had a barbecue. And one night we'd invite all of the staff and their families along for a barbecue. So it's sort of once a quarter, twice a year, 2 to 3 times a year, I'd get to see each of the places because we had so many. I'd invite all the staff along and I'd cook the barbecue.
Nice move.
Because that was my way of demonstrating to them, I'm here to serve you.
Yeah.
That I think was, how do you demonstrate that, that other-centered and really send that message through. And when you take the care enough to actually ask people how they like their steaks or snags or whatever it is cooked, and, they see that you're not just doing it as a token.
As a trick. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. As a trick. So I didn't do it every single time, but certainly made sure that at least once a year in each of our businesses, had the opportunity to do that. So, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one. Any other questions? Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Good job, Gav. You've covered it as far as this topic is concerned, for sure.
Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated. And I will be banging the drum about your business from now on in, because quite frankly, I think it's something that's missing. And just in case, just as the last thing before I go, this is not, I repeat, it is not just live chat. It's conversion as a service. That is a very big distinction between just live chat, because it has an intent to move to the next step. I have understood that correctly, haven't I, Terry?
Oh, correct. Look, our team are effectively an extension to your sales team. The
Yeah.
biggest challenge with live chat is staffing it, the effort and resources that it takes. There's a million reasons why people will avoid it, and some blatantly, some not so blatantly. People are distracted. Some people are distracted by it in a good way, others by a bad way. Some will see it as a distraction away from things they should be doing, like, outbound or qualifying customers or doing quotes, whatever the case may be. Others will see it as a welcome distraction to avoid doing all of those other things like outbound and quotes and other things they should be doing, and they'll just chitty chat all day long. Our team are very focused on outcomes, and I think if there's one thing in our business that demonstrates that we're focused on delivering quality and value, is that we charge per conversion, so per revenue opportunity. That's how we charge. We don't charge per activity levels. It's only on revenue opportunity outcome for you. We figured, my business partner and I figured, that's the easiest way for you to measure the ROI.
Yeah.
And we don't have any lock-in contracts. And so every month we have to earn the right to your business. And so we have the ultimate focus on delivering quality and value every single month, I can assure you. So.
Brave man with those handcuffs. One last thing, I think, which I think.
Thanks, Rich, by the way. Appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a 3-hour conversation last week, so I think we're going to have another one this weekend. We should get together at some point, never matter. The setups, the onboarding, you actually assist in getting that process sorted out, don't you?
We do it all pretty well. So the process that we found is that, again, the mindset challenge of live chat is that it's a big project. And so what we've done is make sure that it's not a big project, that it's not that much different from signing up to, there's no such thing as a free trial, is there? In SaaS, there's no free trial. It takes effort, investment in time and resources and training, whether it's something simple as a Calendly system or right through to a full-blown CRM. Any free trial takes effort to set up, whether you're just testing it yourself or then there's training of your staff. So our approach was that we don't want you to have to worry about training. We don't have to worry about any of the scripting or FAQs. So we'll set all of that up and we send it to you as a draft document to review. People often ask, what's a conversion? What's a sales qualified lead? Well, it's how you qualify a lead. Yeah. So that's part of that document, is that we'll ask you to tell us what your qualification criteria are. What do you need to know? What's your ICP? You tell us your qualification criteria and what your ICP is. We can generally get enough information from your website to be able to set up all the FAQs and scripting we'll need. There will be some objection handling that you can provide us if you like, but we can generally, from the time you sign up to go live, if it's a rush, we can do it in 2 days. But generally, it's about an 8 to 9 day process, depending on how long you sit on the document that we give you for. But it's all done for you. We train the team. We do all the setup. We provide the software as well. There's no software license involved. And we make sure that we match your business processes. So the minimal change in your business, really the only change you see in your business is more meetings booked in your calendar, more conversions if it's a checkout, and more pipeline opportunity for future sales. That's about the outcome you see in your business. We will pop, we have any questions that we can't answer, or we think that there's a question that's not getting answered that would be a nice segue to then more of a sales conversation and begin the qualification process to be able to convert that conversation into a qualified prospect or lead. Then we'll ask you and we'll get some feedback. We're quite proactive, generally like to do it in a Slack channel so we can be instant backwards and forwards, but via email, WhatsApp, whatever else suits us, works for us as well. So yeah, the onboarding process, we like to keep it, again, the philosophy of keeping it simple. Up and running, nice and quick, low effort with big results. That's our philosophy.
Okay. And I suppose the only other thing, which was a conversation we had a couple of weeks back, was sort of data security, compliance, and all the rest of the stuff, just so that people have heard it and it is on the internet. Do you want to just sort of roll through that quickly, just so people understand that you're going to be very close to being enterprise ready, all the rest of the stuff, and what that looks like?
Of course. So we are GDPR compliant and SOC 2 compliant, but not certified, so to speak. So with SOC 2, we will be going through the certification process as we launch the software, which will be probably 8 to 10 weeks away. We'll go through that certification process. People know how long that takes. We'll take the short route. I already have a resource allocated, full-time resource allocated for the compliance component, the GDPR and SOC 2. But we operate that way now. And as Chatmetrics, before the software is launched, we sit very much under the umbrella of our clients' GDPR compliance, in terms of we're effectively a data processor.
Yes, and I think that's very important to mention. So you're basically based on live chat at the back end, and that is rock solid compliant in the US and US qualified.
UK, Europe. Yeah, correct.
And
look, we've got enterprise customers.
Yeah, in US it'll be completely covered.
Yeah. I mean, look, we've got enterprise customers. We're approved providers for the likes of PayPal, for instance. Took it 3 months to jump through those hoops, but we're there. We've got some very large security-based clients in the UK and Germany, very focused on privacy. So again, their focus on security was security and privacy was a big component. And so we tick all the boxes. We just haven't gone to that final stage because we'll do it for the software, which is going to be a slightly different brand.
So I'll wrap up with a date just to make sure everybody can actually put a date on those 10 weeks. So it's now the 3rd of July.
Don't do that, Gav. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. Look, I was pretty
sorry.
I think it'll be a lot earlier than that.
They got a good idea if they're watching in 6 months, 12 months, and not going.
No, look. So I've got. I have a tendency to like to under promise and over deliver. That's another one of my philosophies, and I think it'll be much sooner than that. But as far as a date at this stage, you know what software projects are like, and we're at the final stages now. So whilst we're working to a deadline that's very much internally a deadline, and we'll share an external deadline once we're ready.
Okay, radio. Terry, thank you very much. Has been a pleasure as always.
Absolutely.
Not a surprise, but thank you very much for your time. I realize it's very precious. I also realize, that you've got a lot to do. You are actually building a business, so I really do appreciate you. Thank you. And I'm just going to end the call, and we need to stay on for a second because I just need to make sure that it processes the video. 1 second.
Sure.
So see you later, guys.
Thanks, Gav. It's been great.
End stream.